The attacks in Paris mean the focus in the race for president will now shift decidedly to the war on terror and how to keep Americans safe. Joining us now is one of the Republican frontrunners, Dr. Ben Carson. And Dr. Carson, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
If you were president right now, what would you be doing specifically in response to the attack on Paris?
Well, obviously, extending, our support to the French. They were our first allies, and we certainly want to stand with them and make sure that they understand that and that we sympathize with them. But, recognize that the president has a large array of resources available to him beside just the Pentagon. We need to use our intelligence to a much greater extent, our intelligence agencies. I think looking at the ideological war that's being waged by the jihadists has been very effective, and we need to wage a counter war against them, utilizing social media and all the same mechanisms that they use. And also the clerics. We need to be putting pressure on them to disavow what ISIS is doing. They can't sit on the sideline here. And I think also, looking at what was accomplished recently with the taking of a city, that's a long-range thing, and it worked very well with the Kurds, shutting off supplies, creating the right atmosphere, providing the type of air support. We can start doing that with other places too. You look at places like Mosul. We can start now cutting off the supplies and controlling.
If I may, let me just focus on the military component, because obviously after the slaughter of over 100 people, while all of those are important components, the military component is the most immediate one. And you have said that you would, as president, try to create an international coalition militarily to go after ISIS. How would you put that together? Who would you call first?
Well, what I was just explaining is, how we use the resources that we have. That includes some of our special ops people working in conjunction with an effective fighting force there. Those are the kinds of things that will create enthusiasm as we begin to take back the land, take back the areas, and damage their image throughout the world.
But who would you call first specifically to put together an international military coalition?
My point being that if we get out there and we really lead, and it appears that we're making progress, then all of the Arab states and even the non-Arab states, who I think are beginning to recognize that the jihad movement is global. It is not just local in the Middle East. But if we fight it there, they will have to pool their resources in that area, and then we won't have to necessarily fight them here. That's what I'm saying.
But can you tell us who you would call first, sir, on the international scene?
I would call for all of the Arab states to be involved in this. I would call for all of our traditional allies to be involved in this. I don't want to leave anybody out, because really this is, when you're talking about a global jihad movement, you're talking about a movement whose eventual goal is to dominate the entire world. I think a lot of people...
Well, I'm sorry, sir, but I just want to ask you, you talk about, and you've been very frank about putting U.S. boots on the ground. Would President Carson commit thousands of U.S. troops to going back into Iraq and going into Syria for the first time for a ground war against ISIS?
Well, obviously we have boots on the ground there already. That's an emotionally laden term. How many people do we need to be there? It's really, what are they doing? How effective are they? That I think is much more important than the number of people who are there. And utilizing our special ops, which are absolutely terrific, in conjunction with the Kurds in northern Iraq, you can see how effective that is. And as others are able to join us, the Iraqi forces, played an important role in that too. And they're getting up to speed. We have to continue to work with them, and we will supply what is necessary in order to accomplish the goal. But I don't want to put a specific number on it or indicate what types of people there are, because those are decisions that I think are made by people who have a tremendous amount of military experience and capability. And, you know, for me to pretend like I have all of that knowledge and the ability to formulate all the specific plans and how to do it, I think is foolish. And I think anybody else who thinks they know it all is foolish also.
The Obama administration has said before that it would accept up to 10,000 Syrian refugees as part of the humanitarian crisis. We now learn that one of these attackers had a Syrian passport that indicated he had been part of the refugee flood into Europe in October. Would you continue that policy?
Well, you know, as I've said all along, you know, bringing people into this country from that area of the world, I think, is a huge mistake. Because why wouldn't they infiltrate them with people who are ideologically opposed to us? It would be foolish for them not to do that. So we need to be very compassionate, understand that these people have been displaced, and we should use our expertise and resources to help get them resettled over there and to support them over there. But to bring them here under these circumstances is a suspension of intellect. You know, the reason that the human brain has these big frontal lobes as opposed to other animals is because we can engage in rational thought processing. We can, you know, extract information from the past and present, process it, and project it into a plan. Animals, on the other hand, have big brain stems and rudimentary things because they react. We don't have to just react. We can think.
Sir, we're running out of time, and I'm going to do kind of a lightning round with you on try to get some quick answers. It seems to me that this is a turning point, if you will, in the presidential campaign, because we're now talking not just about electing a president, but electing a commander-in-chief, somebody to keep the country safe. You surprised a lot of people in the last debate when you said this about Syria.
We also must recognize that it's a very complex place. You know, the Chinese are there as well as the Russians, and you have all kinds of factions there.
Briefly, sir, what evidence do you have that the Chinese are fighting in Syria?
I didn't say that they were fighting there. I said they're involved. They're involved by supplying weapons, which we have asked them not to do, but they continue to do anyway. Some are very sophisticated and obviously are going to require support in order to operate.
You also said that the U.S., and you have said for some time, should establish a no-fly zone over parts of Syria where the anti-Assad rebels are. And you said that if the Russians were to violate that, we should be prepared to shoot them down. Here you are on that.
If they do come into that area, after you have given them adequate warning, after we've talked to Putin, you shoot them down, absolutely.
Dr. Carson, what happens if the Russians respond to that by shooting down one of our planes?
I would do that in conjunction with the Turkish forces along the Syrian-Turkish border, where a huge number of those refugees are located. It's a humanitarian thing to try to provide them a safe haven for now.
But sir, if I may press
the Russians understood that we were going to do that. If
I may press my point, what do you do if after we shoot down a Russian plane, they shoot down one of ours?
If they violate it, we will, in fact, enforce it. And, you know, we'll see what happens. You know, for us to always be backing down because we're afraid of a conflict, that's not how we became a great nation, Chris.
But you're talking about getting potentially into a shooting war with Russia over Syria?
Well, if we establish the no-fly zone and we make clear the rules, if they violate it, that's why you have a no-fly zone. That's the very definition of a no-fly zone. You can't fly there.
Finally, sir, we are no longer, it seems to me, after Paris, talking about issues like immigration and taxes as important as they are. We're talking about life and death. We are talking about keeping Americans safe from people who would slaughter us, as they did in Paris. And I guess the question is, why should voters choose you over someone who actually has experience in foreign policy, who has experience in national security?
Are you talking about somebody like Hillary Clinton, perhaps? I would say the reason is because you can articulate intelligent options and because you know how to work with other people and utilize the incredible resources that we have available to us. You know, I've had an opportunity in recent weeks to talk to a lot of incredible people who have a lot of experience, getting their lifetime experience. I talked to Henry Kissinger and got his whole perspective on those areas.
Right.
There are a lot of other people that I will be continuing to talk to. You have to be willing to recognize that you are not the end-all, but you are the conduit for the conduct of American policies.
Dr. Carson, thank you. Thanks for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, sir.
Thank you, Chris.